Welcome to A Leader Story, where we explore the unique paths of extraordinary leaders. In each episode, we ask the same 7 questions to our guests, revealing the diverse journeys and insights that shape their success. Join us as we uncover the stories that make each leader's experience truly one of a kind. Today, we have the honor of hosting Jenn McCarron, a trailblazer in legal operations and technology. Jenn is the president of the board of directors at the Corporate Legal Operations Consortium, a trade group association whose mission is to innovate the business and practice of law. Previously, she led Netflix's legal operations and technology team, setting the vision and strategy for innovation. Jenn also spearheaded legal technology at Spotify and managed major compliance and knowledge management programs at Cisco. Join us as we delve into Jenn's remarkable journey and insights on leadership and innovation. Jenn, what is one decision you made that was a turning point for your leadership?
Might have more than one. There's this one decision I made, and it was around 2013 or 14. I was working at Cisco. I was actually working at a startup that was headed into Cisco Systems Inc. Cisco Systems Inc., big San Jose hardware, internet pipes company, now software company. They acquire a lot. They acquired the startup I was at, and full transparency, the job I had at the startup was a day job while I played all the guitars that are behind these sound barriers and toured with bands on the weekends and at night. When I went into Cisco, something sparked in me. I've always loved business systems, software environments. Joe, you and I met at working together at Apple. So I had the tech bug, but when I went in there, I said, you know what? I've toured for a number of years. I put out some albums. I'm tired of being in vans. I am going to hang the guitar up right now. And the band kind of fizzled out. We put something out and parked it. And I'm going to bring all of my creativity, all of it, into that office with the Cisco logo on the door every day. And let's see what happens. This is an experiment. I wasn't bringing all of it in this job I had at the startup, which was paralegal / contracts manager / you know a lot about tech / we know you're in a band. We'll let you go out on tour / we're going to pay you very low income. And I said, cool, as long as there's benefits. And so I made this leap, this decision to take a big leap in myself. And I always knew that there were leadership qualities in me. I could see that from roles I had in my youth on sports teams and guiding people or peers in school to make decisions, in business school when I was in college, in the band settings that I was in playing music. And I actually made a decision to go and see if I can work my way back and up on sort of the ladder of performance and success in the corporate environment and see if I can catch up with my peers. And I'll say that probably 3 years in, it was the hardest 3 years of my life was to reprogram myself for corporate work in a role that was called technical program management in a very technical company, an engineer-laden company in Silicon Valley. And it was grueling and it was ugly and I didn't know how to do anything and I had to learn from people who were younger than me. I was not a leader. I was a leader without authority. I had to influence a legal department and partners in the 500 to 1,000 person range. So I was getting up doing presentations like, hello, I'm Jenn. That's 200 people listening. There's a lot of leadership involved in that. And it was trial by fire somewhere in the 3 to 4 year mark. My VP said to me in our one-on-one, he said, you know, you have it. He said, you have leadership potential. You have that thing that not everyone gets. I encourage you to foster that, take coaching, and we want to try you out eventually and grow you to manage people. So I think that it was just a big decision to bet on myself and an inkling I had and let it all out, even though it was hard that first year to 3 to get my bearings and learn all the vernacular and learn the rhythm of it.
That's awesome. From an ROI perspective, there's nothing lost on betting on yourself, right? I mean, I think it's just other than time and then learning what maybe not to do. So it's great that it paid off for you. That's awesome. So
It's paying off.
Yeah, that's good. So I think leading into the next question, and I'm really interested based off of your creative background, how do you foster innovation and creativity within your teams?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I think that's one of the most important questions in all of these tech roles and in the industries, Joe, you and I have worked in for years now. Because AI is here and generative AI is here, and it's going to do the tasks that are just mundane, sometimes very important to be done, but mundane, and they break your focus and you have to switch contexts and you don't get to do the fun, creative stuff in your roles, like coming up with that pitch to show your leadership and get greenlit a new project or some budget, right? And I think that it's a crossroads we're at where we need to lean on our creativity and our reasoning skills even more. And there's a lot of books coming out in the business literature right now about returning to creativity. I'm doing a lot of writing on this myself. So I love that you're focusing in on this. Look, I've led as recently as Netflix an innovation and tech team. And this was a greenfield environment where everything was run manually in that legal department. And they gave us some budget and said, I don't know, show us what we don't know and create things. How do you foster that? First of all, you have to it's like when you're in a band in a rehearsal and you're trying to come up with a song, you'll all just sit around with your instrument and make noise. And then your bass player starts making noise and you play along with them. It's their idea and you're just noodling and riffing, and then they're feeling their idea take shape. And sometimes that goes somewhere, and sometimes you have to go, let's keep going with that. And then the drummer may come up with something and you follow them into that, and it's not going anywhere. And like people aren't vibing on that idea, but you know what? You see the idea all the way through with them. Maybe you jammed on it for 10 minutes. There's this mutual support, experimentation attitude, throwing people an idea, saying yes and receiving it and going, how about this? How about this? How about that? And being a yes ander, not a no, but, and not a negator. And know that a lot of stuff is going to be left on the cutting room floor when you're working and fostering innovation and coming up with ideas for a new program, a new process, a new workflow way of doing things, or a new technology. But you have to it's a volume game. You have to have all these ideas come up, because I used to say this, Joe, you knew me as a photographer back when I was working at Apple with you. I always noticed in the statistics, 1 in 25 photos was good.
Mm-hmm.
The one,
100%.
that was my stat. And I could see it in how I edited and the scripts I would design to blast through to find the one. And the one was always in my first 5. So get to those 25 ideas and use the brilliant human beings around you and foster no stupid ideas, no dumb questions. Draw it. Go up to the board, stand up. If you're the manager, speak less and pull their ideas up and put them on the wall and let them lead the room or foster the situation. So failure is a big part of that. You need failure in order to just go, okay, not that idea. That means let's go this way. And you have to make it fun, not you failed or that was a stupid idea. You have to create playfulness in the right atmosphere where people are like, oh, okay, it didn't work out. Ha ha ha. And that was something, a Netflix culture, a company like Netflix is big on failure. They think that that is the navigational point and system you use to get to the answer is, I failed here. Here's how I failed. And here's what I learned from it. And so long as you're learning and fostering learning from failures, everyone's actually not failing, you're succeeding. So learning, collaboration, playfulness, volume of ideas, and just jam with people, guys. Just jam it out. And some of them might become the next song and some might, but it's all part of the process.
Jen, that may be one of the best analogies from a fostering creativity I've ever heard. Like 100%, you're totally right. I mean, even me as not a musician, but playing in the creative space, I totally get the riffing part of it, right? Or working in a creative space or creating a video or like there is no failure. It's all
There's
about
no failure.
Yeah, it's all about being safe. That's safe. Keep going. Sorry.
And Joe, we need people like you and I who are creatives and creators and then come into the corporate world and do these wonderful transformation tech jobs. We need to infuse the corporate world with more creativity and pull that in as a value and something we all center around. Sometimes people get lost from that because they just get going in the what they think is this analytical slog of email and the PowerPoint, and it's very eye rolly. Like, work is a lot, and if you infuse more of this in there, you can actually infuse more fun. I'm a total kook at work. Like, I'm a creative kook, but I flip it over and I can write the budget and the PowerPoint slide or the Google slide and also be very serious. So it's knowing all dimensions of that, but we need that more in corporate roles.
Yeah. And going back to your Apple thought or call out, right? Like, I really believe you need the Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak mindset in the same body, right? And I think that brings both of those things, that creativity of how you bring it forth and also the technical skill to be able to accomplish and actually drive something to fruition. So yeah, no, that's so good. I mean, I feel like we could talk about just the entire episode on this area. So
Totally.
Any other last points?
You mentioned Steve Jobs. You and I were Steve Jobs devotional before it was cool.
We were.
I just want to say we're not spring chickens. And, the reason I went into tech was a book I read about Steve Jobs in the 90s that talked about how much of a failure Apple was. It was written by that Wall Street Journal journalist. I'll shoot you the book after. And it was like a dramatic saga of like failures, politics, fighting, backstabbing, art, leading tech pushing art. And I don't know, I closed the book on my summer internship. I'm like, I have to switch my major. I have to completely go into a tech company and software environment. This is art. And it was very much like opened a road to me on all the career paths. And this was pre-iPod, people. Like, this is very old, when I had to fight to get my Mac online at my college. Me and the Mac guy were up all night like, how do we get the TCP/IP protocols? And we got it in the middle of the night, and we were like high-fiving and hugging, and people were like, who is this weird, cool girl with a Mac?
Yep.
Now they're all on Macs, Joe.
All of us.
All of us.
Cool. Well, thanks. That's such good stuff. So at the same time, the creative spin, I'm super interested to hear your insights on the next question too, because I think like we said, it's a balance, right? So how do you balance driving results with maintaining a positive team culture?
How do I balance driving results by maintaining positive...
With maintaining
a positive team culture? Well, after my mini TED talk on playing, I seriously do, and we were focused a lot on in my last role at Netflix as a leader of a tech and innovation and ops team, was really getting concrete every quarter or 2 quarters or 3 quarters, whatever the right planning cycle is, on goals. Are, first of all, having a clear vision, and then being able to boil that down to some goals, and then being able to boil that out to, okay, what 2 to 3 things can we work on in a quarter and deliver those, and setting these things up. I mean, you probably know the SMART moniker, but setting up goals so that they're simple and measurable and attainable and time-bound and realistic. It's actually the small, simple stuff that, when you put that on the roadmap and commit to do it, now you know what to do, and you're working in a great constraint. I'm working on these 2 to 3 things this quarter or this half of the year only, and that can give you and the team. It gave the team latitude to say, I can't do that cool, fun thing right now, and you have to be able to do that in these knowledge worker environments we're in. Otherwise, like, the business tornado comes for you, and you're all working on a bunch of stuff, and sometimes you start working on stuff that is important but doesn't have impact, and you don't want to do that. And so it's having really good strategic planning, and also having that innovative or playful or creative space. And then to keep it positive as a leader, I took this feedback from someone on my team because I wasn't doing this. Someone who reported to me was like, you really need to recognize the wins more as a leader. I feel like we're just grinding, and then like we stand up a great thing and it's on to the next thing. And it's important for you as a leader to shout it all out. And I was like, ooh, burn. I like it. Yeah. Good feedback. And we instituted a celebrate the wins almost on the calendar, and made everyone sit and talk about and listen to what they launched against their goals, how it went, how they failed, what they learned. And we all sat there, we ate something sweet or drank something fun, and just took space to hang those, plaques up and go, yes, and applaud one another. So sometimes a little space and acknowledgement, especially coming from the leader.
Yeah.
And then I loved the Celebrate the Wins. I started emceeing it like I was announcing like an award ceremony, because give me a microphone and I'll MC it, Joe.
That's awesome. Something to double click on too, and this learning in my leadership experience, right, is especially the folks that want to push back on the goal setting. The nice thing about the goal setting is by having that structure, you actually do create the space for creativity, because you know how to time box now.
Yeah.
You know what you need to focus on, and you know, okay, if I can accomplish X, Y, Z, I can also inject the innovation with the spare time that I have, right? So, that's good insights, Jen. I really appreciate it.
People think that sometimes like the creative and everything is very chaotic and unstructured, but artists, creative, Steve Jobs, like people work better with this. Like, give me a canvas and a time bind around this. And like I'll in my calendar, if I'll put 30 minutes and go, okay, in there, just whatever music I make, that's what I'm making. The end. 30 minutes is the end. Whether it's good or not, I don't know, but it's important that it just gets done and something gets made, and I'm exercising the muscle. Use that with your strategic planning, like bind things, and watch people actually rise when you give them constraints to work against.
That's so good. One of the things, I don't know if I'll use this, one of the things I try to do is I'll bring my crappiest camera if I'm going to go do photography. And in that constraint of the crappy camera, right, you actually are fostering more creative thoughts of how to accomplish what you're looking to shoot. Because if I only have one lens and one camera and I'm going to Thailand, let's say, you will actually probably grab more because you're not fussing about, you're not trying to change lanes, you're not trying to change lenses, you just have one thing to concentrate on, and that's capturing a moment. And so the limitation actually helps to bring more creativity out.
It does.
Yeah.
I've always been a believer in that. In learning musical instruments, I always started on the learner instruments and mastered them and exceeded I let my play exceed the instrument before I go buy a $5,000 bass. No, I learned on a $500 bass, if that. I think it was $3. And this goes for like in our work worlds we're in corporate roles as knowledge workers. You don't need Asana. You don't need Jira. You don't need a ticketing solution. I mean, look, if it's an IT team straight, you're going to need one eventually. But back to sort of the task management or the Asana or project management software, like you learn how to manage a project first, even if it's with stickies and Google Calendar invites or Outlook invites.
Yep.
And then you can apply that to any one of these instruments, but they're not going to teach you how to do stuff better.
Yeah. I'd say most of the engineering teams I work with even today still have that whiteboard, Kanban board with sticky notes that they move between each of the stages, and that's what works for them, right?
One of the best rollouts I ever had was stickies on a Kanban board on the wall at Spotify, and it was like we would move them along all the way to the post go live, features, etc. And it's analog, and it was art. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
100%. So let's move on to the next question. Can you describe a moment when you had to make a tough ethical decision?
I could tell you a broad one and a specific one. The broad one, as someone like me who is dedicated to this mission of advancing the business and practice of law. Well, if you read between the lines of that, we're trying to automate a lot of the work or workflows of the legal departments inside corporations of the Fortune 100, 500, and beyond companies. Now, you can sit with a seasoned paralegal, and you could feel that they are freaked out, that you're coming for their job. And in some ways, you are. And you're coming for the ways they work that are no longer have to be manual or analog. They can be sped up, expedited by technology. And I am constantly in this balance with, well, I am, but it's not personal and it's not today and it might not impact you. Like you and I just might be the change transition phase, like A through F, but it might not take the jobs of what you do today for years. So how do you, in this human way, like come down and meet them where they are and only take them on these next steps, sell them on a vision that doesn't obviate or replace them? It's an ethical dilemma I'm at a lot because I'm working for a company whose primary duty on this earth is to serve its stakeholders. Not me, Jen, not senior lawyer or senior paralegal.
Yep.
It's to serve the shareholders of the corporation. And I'm here to do that and for the mission. And sometimes it doesn't always factor for the human in it all, even though it needs the human resources to get all of this done. So I ride a line a lot where I sell on a big vision, but then I come back and move here very iteratively and in a human way where I'm trying not to eclipse them. That's the general ethical dilemma that is my career path. And I get to navigate the psychology of every day. And then I'll say just like a specific one I encountered many years ago. After you and I left Apple, I was still touring. I was doing photography. I was working at a photography studio, part-time, just touring as a photographer, shooting world events. And something went on at the studio that was not okay with me. And I was just a young, scrappy photographer, part-time person who was a nothing, basically, there. And I'm in my 20s, and I'm kind of shy and quiet with cool hair. The hair's always been cool. And someone's behaving in a way that actually, my camera just went out, morally and ethically was not jiving with my morals and my actual ethics. And I boldly, after some consideration, I found myself at a dinner with the CEO who's in town visiting, and he kind of opened up a thread with me at this dinner. He started to realize he had a tech person on his hands. I had hidden some of those facts. I was just taking pictures. And he wanted to bring me more into the company and a bigger business role, and it was awesome. And I said, well, hey, you have a problem on your hands. And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, look, this is risky, but here goes, and told him some stuff I saw that happened on the job with some colleagues that was unprofessional, etc. And he was aghast and was like, what? And I watched this leader walk into the company the next day and fire that person just based on what I reported in. And it was tough. It was tough because I didn't dislike that person. They were an easy person to get along with in the office, but there was just some stuff that was not right. A, for the business, and B, for the humans working in the business. And look, I'm a daughter of a cop, and my brother's a lawyer. I work in legal tech. I'm in the Justice League, and I'm a Libra too. So it scales forever. So if something goes wrong, It was a risky move, and the office cleared out because 3 people quit in solidarity with the person fired. And then the CEO turns to me and goes, do you want to run this office? And I stayed for a little bit, but ultimately I wound up leaving that region. I didn't stay to run the business, but that was one of the biggest moral actual dilemmas I ever faced in a workplace. And, I did the right thing for that business, that person, for the people working around and the stakeholders of the business.
That's really good.
It's a good one.
Good. All right, so I think that leads us into the next question. Well, so what role does feedback play in your leadership? How do you both give and receive it?
Feedback is seminal, and I really had to come to terms with it going into a corporate environment and culture like Netflix, where it's a feedback first culture. There's a few cultures out there in the corporate stratosphere that are deliberately developmental cultures. Netflix is one. Bridgewater, the hedge fund up in Connecticut, is another one. And that basically means you're going to hear it. You're going to hear it. If you have broccoli in your teeth, they're going to tell you. And what are you going to do with that? And it's terrifying. And it's not easy. And everyone on the interview says, I love feedback. Nobody likes feedback because it hurts. And I don't like it because it hurts. But it's my relationship with the receipt of that in the moment that it hits and it hurts. It's what I decide to do there that makes me a feedback forward person or not. Some of the biggest growth strides I've made in my career came after constructive feedback was given to me in a professional, kind, but straightforward way, basically telling me in some way how I sucked. And I would never fight them on that. Some of my earlier career, the early run part of the legal tech career, I wouldn't fight him on that my boss's feedback to me. I would just kind of go home and quietly cry and like splash water on my face and look in the mirror and go like, who do I want to be? Do I want to be the person that is ABCing and it's not helping the team get the thing done and it holds up the deadline or is expensive? Or do I want to be the awesome person? And I try to do the behavioral alchemy where I turn things around. You know, when I talked about that earlier moment where I went into Cisco via acquisition and I put the guitars down and I decided I'm going to give it my all. I have a clean slate, new staff, new leaders. They don't know me. They didn't know that I kind of sucked. And that one of the last things my general counsel said to me as we were boxing up his office at Tandberg, the billion-dollar Norwegian video conferencing equipment company that Cisco acquired, where I was the last hire. I'm boxing up his office with him because he was not going to go work at Cisco. And he said to me, you know, Jen, you're really smart. You're brilliant even. You could go be a patent attorney or you could do this tech thing and be good. He's like, you're brilliant. He's like, but you work about as hard as a government worker. And he goes, that doesn't work in the private sector. And he goes, look, I plugged you in at Cisco. You have a job there. And I plugged you in higher than you work now because I know you have potential. It's just you have not turned it all on. And he goes, so if you want to take a shot at this, flip it over and go. And I was like, okay. Thank you, Steve. Bye. Good luck with your retirement. And I literally went and cried to some of my close friends and was like, I felt smashed to pieces by that. I felt embarrassed. I felt lazy and just messy and all the things. And I splashed the water in my face and went into Cisco and showed up there and was like, hello, I'm betting on me. I'm Jen, and I'm the most amazing underpaid person you'll ever see in your staff. And I worked my way up from literally the bottom of the stack, almost one negative or constructive feedback moment at a time in this career. When it comes, I just go like this. I go, oh, they have constructive feedback for me. And when I get it, I try not to defend. I try to go, thank you. Heard. Understood. I don't make my reaction. I try not to make my reaction their problem or this conversation. That's between me and me. Like 98% of it. Or me and like my confidants or my support network. Or sometimes I have to go to a colleague and go, do I do that thing? And they go, mm-hmm. Or one colleague recently was like, I don't see that. I had to validate some of the feedback I was getting because I was confused by it. And some were like, I don't see that. I'm like, okay. And here's a great example too. I'm very direct. And in some places in this world, direct means derogatory. In New York, it means that's how you get your coffee. That's how you get coffee fast and get there. And so there's this thing with feedback too. It's almost all true or all false, depending on who's giving and who's receiving. And you have to take it all in stride. Like, so someone might tell you something like that you think is bonkers, and you're struggling on whether you can metabolize that or not. You don't metabolize everything. In life, we get to metabolize a few things. Like my old boss, I metabolized that and was like, I'm never going to be the worst player on the team again. I'm going to rise now and go be the best. And I got there in 4 years. But just because you don't metabolize it doesn't invalidate it. It doesn't mean it's not true in their eyes. And that's how they see you as a derogatory person in certain business settings. And so you work with that and you go, well, now I know how I'm perceived and I can modify how I am in a situation with that person or that group so that it doesn't come out that way, and you play your behavior to the middle of whatever the entity is that's giving you that, or the room you're showing up to, or the team, or whatever it is. You can work with these things even though they're not true. But if it's their perception, there is a bit of truth to it. And if you have to keep working with them, you have to play. You have to play and be willing to receive it or at least hold it. So don't be defensive is the number one tip. If someone gets defensive, they're not listening and they're not going to integrate or metabolize it. And when giving feedback, I learned this so well at Netflix. Do not tell them more than 1 or 1.2 things on your long list of things that suck about them. We all have a list. Don't come at them with a list. Be kind, be humane. Do 1 to 1.2 if there's a related thing. Ground the feedback in a time the other day in that meeting when you said this thing I noticed, and the consequence was, and then constructive means, and here's something, like if I were in your shoes, I would do this way instead of that, or try this instead. Like, give them something to construct with. Don't just go, well, I hate that font you used. End of feedback. Like, no, and don't use language like that because those are strong words, etc. Like, give people something to build with, and only do one thing, and give them a chance to integrate that and come up with an action for it, or suggest an action. That's how I try to do the feedback game.
Jenn, I want to thank you for the transparency in that. I think it's very, going back to what you said around like during an interview, oh, I love feedback. I think I'll be honest, most of the interviews I've done so far have kind of been that a bit. So I appreciate your transparency and your answer, and because feedback can hurt, but
growth hurts. But growth hurts. And like, to grow your physical muscles, you have to hurt them and break them. Mm-hmm. So to grow your leadership acumen, which is a very hard soft skill acumen to grow, which only comes through experience, no books, even though we're going to talk about books. You learn how to be a leader on the job. There's no masters in this. Like there might be in like programming or something really tangible. And you have to be willing to break to grow, and it's painful and uncomfortable. And so it's just like, put your seatbelt on and learn how to take it and get that perspective of how you're seen in the world, and that perception, and make a study of it. That's what I try to do for self-awareness.
That's really good. So moving on to the next question. Jenn, can you tell me, how do you continue to grow and develop as a leader?
Yeah, just because you made it into the leadership role, it doesn't mean you know what you're doing. And it's the inverse for a lot of us. I've learned, you get into this role and you're like, oh, now what? I've convinced them that I know what I'm doing. What am I doing? I don't know. It's a lot of I don't knows, but having a formula and curiosity, collaboration, problem solving, relentlessness, and figuring it out along the way. There were a lot of times in the work that I'm in that they were like, you're going to do this thing now at work. And I'm like, I have no idea how to do litigation. I don't know one thing about litigation, ops, the tech workflow, the tools, the lingo. I'm a part of a community group. It's called the Corporate Legal Ops Consortium. I have ascended from lowly, I used to make the app for the conferences and not get the credit, to now I'm the president of the board and I run their podcast. What a rise, and what an honor, through just hard work and sweat and a long line of years of work and service. But in being of service to a community, you meet people. And I met this guy, Jesse, at a roundtable discussion through the community. And then I got handed this litigation remit when I was at Spotify. And I was like, I have no idea what to do. And I called him in the middle of the night. I was in Sweden, so it was the middle of the night somewhere in the world, and he was in California. And he taught me everything. He knew. He was an expert, and he just gave me like a playbook. And then I showed up to work the next week like, let's go. So community is a great place to foster learning and growth, because you can go to other people and learn. Mentorship, you always need a mentor over systems of your life at different points, whether you have that mentor over your professional career, how you navigate your job and success and the ladder and leadership, buy-in, all the fun things. Get yourself a mentor. I've needed a mentor or like a personal trainer over the physical realm, because I'm deeply lazy, as my first general counsel told me and showed me. If I'm not paying for it and I'm not accountable, I won't show up for myself. It's hard. And I had a trainer for 4 years in a row recently in California, and I showed up with him twice a week, and it was not cheap, and I hated it a lot of the time. And I did it anyway. And it taught me so much that I paused the trainer when I moved back to New York, and I'm able to train myself right now. So there's something to throw money at it. Put your hard-earned money, which is your time, on the line, and invest in your growth or your learning. I'm always reading a book or something or listening to a podcast. Those are the cheat codes. And I take this feedback in, and I'm very big on growth plans when I'm in, especially the corporate roles. What's my growth plan? What's one or two things I can invest in this year? Time, learning, new skill, hard skill, soft skill that's going to help me flourish. And you want to know what you should grow at? Go get some constructive feedback from the people, your peers, your boss, and the people who report to you. There's always one or two things there that you can take that painful thing and then turn it into, well, that's what I'm going to work on. Public speaking skills or storytelling, and then go. I mean, YouTube University, Joe. How often are people like you and I on there learning something? And I'll lastly say in this department, have a hobby. Have some passion or hobby passion or whatever it is. Learn something else somewhere in your life. A craft. Journaling every day is even that. Cultivating those things opens your mind up to be creative or show you more of who you are, what's bothering you, or what your strengths are, or clears you out and gets you to completion, teaches you how to solve. And I always say, like, music is a passion of mine. And to this day, I still use it as an escape and a place to go and create something. And it helps me, my problem-solving brain. I'll come back to the corporate flow I'm in and go, oh, and just have a different perspective because I went somewhere else and I forgot about that. But our brains work in this very algorithmic way, and it teaches you how to just keep persevering. So get a hobby. And if you hate that one, keep hobby shopping. There's so much out there in the world.
Totally. It's funny. It was right around, for me, it was right around COVID hit, right before, when I realized I actually made a conscious effort. I'm like, I don't have any hobbies. Like work, family, and it just all, not that there's anything wrong with those, but I just didn't have the creative outlets. And that's when I started to invest, from me, more into the photography side of things. And it just opens up a whole nother thought process. So you look at things differently when you can separate yourself from those things all the time. It just improves. I think it improves everything, all of your interactions, when you can have that sort of creative or additional outlet. It doesn't even have to be creative, like you said.
It doesn't have to be creative. Like sitting and writing in a journal every day, just free writing or dumping. It does something to your brain waves in the form of like a meditative clearing or something. There's a connection with this to this. And getting it out can create space for you to be the better family person, the better colleague. Like the colleague who doesn't fly off the handle and get really frustrated with some repeat situation. If you sat and did that kind of thing, you might show up differently. I'm a big fan of it. It'll make you better everywhere. And it'll teach your brain new neural pathways. I went on a big neuro, psych, and science bender in my reading in the last year. And I can't wait to talk about books because we're going to talk about this. But we can change our brains and our own, like we're not inked in permanent ink. This is all newer science. The brain has elasticity or neuroplasticity, I should say, that we can still develop beyond 25. And I'm obsessed with that. And you can find new potential in even micro ways and show up to work. Like you change one little thing in you this much, you could show up to work and they're like, who's that?
Yep.
That's amazing. Promote Joe. Because they need that thing that comes out on the work, etc. So I don't know. It's like a really fun game of nano level improving psychology.
That's awesome. So that leads into the next question. Well, then, so what leadership?
I just want to talk about books.
So I'll get to it quick. What leadership book or any books, neuroscience, whatever, what leadership book has influenced you the most and why? And honestly, this is the toughest question for all of the guests.
Well, you know why?
Saying one is very difficult.
That's why. I'll tell you why. Because psychologically, when you want the superlative list, you're like, what's the one? And so my answer is, there is no one.
Yep.
And my answer is, if you're in leadership or you're an aspiring leader, you got to read them all. Read them all. Read all the old school ones. Like, read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. It's an important book that so many of these books have built upon, and it's been around, 20 years?
Yep.
Read Think and Grow Rich, even though Napoleon Hill was the biggest shyster of the 1930s. He was the kernel for career coaching and this whole like flourishing of the coaching industry. His book, but it has some real seminal ideas in there about leadership traits. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Like, these are the old school ones you have to read.
Yep.
And then put them on your shelf and absolutely forget about them and get with some of these new ones. Like, I'm all up on Carol Dweck, everything right now, the Stanford professor researcher. She has a book called Mindset. And it builds on this idea that you're not done baking at 25. You could learn and go into anything and keep expanding your potential if you have a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Here's how to cultivate a growth mindset. And you can have it over certain areas of your life. Like right now, I'm in a growth mindset at the gym. My muscles are growing. My first 3 years at Netflix, I didn't even look at the gym. To your point, I was just coming home every night like, because it took it all from me. And that was by design. And then my pants got tight and I'm like, I can't afford new pants. And I went and threw all my money at super expensive LA trainers. It was ridiculous. And now I'm ripped. But that was a journey. But growth mindset and over certain systems of your life. It's not like meant to be overwhelming. And then her ideas of growth mindset and Adam Grant's idea around the book Hidden Potential. I read that recently. And it's the same thing. It's like, it's okay for your talent to take forever to come out. It's okay if at 45 you peak. Sometimes there's this overemphasis on you have to know what you want to do at 21 and like sell your first startup by 25 and be a millionaire by like throw all that stuff out the window. Most of us are on a slow course and developing talent later. And I am a very, like I call it delayed onset adulthood. That is me. Someone couldn't believe the other day that I was 44 and I'm like, either my skincare is working or I act like a teenager. I'll take the compliment, but it's okay if we go slow and take a long time to get there to that next management rung. If they're like, a promotion's not for 3 years, like enjoy the journey, learn as much as you can between now and then. And these books really talk about how to cultivate your own like reaching your own potential and a path to that. And this has been a lot of my life's adult work. So I'm fascinated, and it's all neuropsych. A lot of this stuff is neuropsych, and my Sony camera is overheating too. My Sony camera is hot.
So with that, we'll end. But Jenn, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time. Honestly, since we started chatting again, probably a little over a year ago, every once in a while, even though we never were able to sync up, I've been excited to talk to you more because you come from a grain of creativity and different process and mindset that you can just see in the presence that you bring through everything that you do. And I knew this would be an extremely fun and truly important conversation from a leadership perspective, because I think, honestly, we're both the same age. I think we're a new wave of leader that is needed today, right? A new thought process. And, the more that we can share these type of things, again, like you said, a lot of this type of conversation happens only when you get into it. It's a muscle that needs to be flexed. So, my hope is always in these type of conversations with you and with others is that we expose folks that don't get to see these closed door type of scenarios, these things that leadership brings or only experience brings, right? You can expose them not just through a book, but through a conversation, through the leader's mouth of the experience that they've had and that they bring and the insights that come with it. So you really dealt that in spades. It's going to be really hard for whoever follows you next on the next episode, but really, really appreciate your time and super looking forward to getting this out and getting more people to see, what you bring to the table. You already have a very large following, but, thank you for investing the time with this. Really, really appreciate it.
But it's such a pleasure having this convo. Thank you for asking me on. It really made me think about things. So, yeah. And fun to be my debut elite audio chain tester with you. That your next guest is certainly going to have a tough audio act to follow.
Totally. It was so awesome having Jenn as a guest today. This was a long one this week, Well, there was just too much good content to remove anything. I really appreciate how she brings her creativity and leadership background together to form her truly unique perspective. Thank you for joining us on this week's edition of A Leader Story. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe to help more people discover these inspiring leadership stories. And don't forget to tune in every Tuesday for new episodes. See you next week and keep writing your own unique leadership story.